A young boy stood outside a bustling football stadium in Liverpool, shivering slightly in the crisp autumn air. His small hands clutched a box of homemade cupcakes, his eyes scanning every passerby with a hopeful smile. He wasn't just selling cupcakes for fun. This wasn't a school fundraiser or a local bake sale. He was fighting for his life. 10-year-old Ahmed had been diagnosed with a rare form of bone cancer 6 months ago. The treatments were grueling, and the medical bills were piling up. His parents were doing everything they could, but the costs were overwhelming. That's when Ahmed decided he wasn't going to sit back and watch his family struggle. He was going to help. He set up a small stand in front of the stadium with a hand-drawn sign that read, "Cupcakes for a Cure. Help me beat cancer." People stopped occasionally, buying a cupcake or two, offering small donations. But most just walked by. Some didn't notice him. Others were too focused on the match to care. Then, something extraordinary happened. A man dressed in a sleek tracksuit and a Liverpool cap stopped a few feet away, watching the scene unfold. He had a presence about him, calm, steady, but commanding. Fans who recognized him stopped in their tracks, whispering excitedly. But Ahmed, too young to know who he was, simply looked up and smiled. "Would you like a cupcake, sir?" he asked, holding up a box. The man, none other than Muhammed Salah, Liverpool's legendary forward, stepped closer. He glanced at the sign, then looked into the boy's bright, determined eyes. "You're raising money for your treatment?" he asked, his voice warm and filled with curiosity. Ahmed nodded. "Yes, sir. I have to go to the hospital a lot, and my parents say it's really expensive. So I thought maybe I could help." For a moment, Mohammed Salah didn't say a word. He simply studied the boy, taking in the bravery behind his innocent smile. Then he did something that left everyone watching in shock. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. But he didn't buy just one cupcake. He didn't even buy a box. Instead, he pulled out a thick stack of 50-pound notes and placed them gently on the table. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ahmed's father, who had been standing nearby, rushed over, his hands covering his mouth in disbelief. "Sir, this is too much. We can't," he began, but Mohammed raised a hand, silencing him with a simple shake of his head. "It's not too much," he said. "It's what he deserves." Ahmed's eyes widened as he looked at the pile of money in front of him. He had been thrilled when someone gave him a 10-pound note earlier that morning, but this was life-changing. Mohammed crouched down to Ahmed's level, his kind face softening. "You're a fighter, kid. Keep fighting." Tears welled up in his father's eyes. People in the crowd began clapping, some even pulling out their own wallets to contribute, inspired by Mohammed Salah's generosity. Others stepped forward, handing Ahmed money, buying cupcakes. Even those who had walked past him before were now eager to help. The small cupcake stand turned into something much bigger, a movement. A wave of kindness spread through the stadium entrance, strangers coming together to support a young boy who had shown more courage than most adults ever would. By the end of the day, Ahmed and his family had raised more money than they had ever imagined. But the story didn't end there. The next morning, Ahmed's father received a phone call. It was from a private hospital, one of the best cancer treatment centers in Europe. They had just received an anonymous donation to cover Ahmed's medical expenses, every single penny. His father broke down in tears. There was no name attached to the donation, but deep down, they knew who it was. Mohammed Salah had done more than just buy a few cupcakes. He had changed Ahmed's life forever. As the news spread, something incredible happened. Ahmed's story went viral. Social media lit up with posts about the young boy selling cupcakes to fight cancer and the football icon who stepped in to change his life. Donations started pouring in, not just for Ahmed, but for other children battling similar fights. News outlets across Europe reached out to his family, eager to share their story. But despite all the attention, Ahmed remained the same sweet, determined boy. When a reporter named Sophie Muller, a well-known sports journalist, asked him how he felt about meeting Mohammed Salah, he just smiled and said, "He's really nice, and he believes in me." And that belief carried him through the toughest days. With the money raised, Ahmed was able to receive top-notch treatment at the private hospital. The doctors were amazed at his resilience. Even on the hardest days, when the treatments left him feeling weak and exhausted, he never stopped fighting. And Mohammed Salah, he didn't just walk away after that one moment. That a few weeks later, Ahmed's father received another unexpected call. This time, it was Mohammed himself. "How's our little warrior doing?" he asked. Ahmed's father was speechless. He had never expected to hear from him again. "He's fighting," he said, holding back tears. "Because of you, he has a real chance." "No, Mohammed replied. Because of his own strength. I just gave him a little push." A few months later, Mohammed arranged for Ahmed and his family to visit him at Anfield. Ahmed got to meet some of his favorite players, sit in the dugout, and even kick a ball around on the pitch. For a boy who had spent so much time in hospital rooms, this was a dream come true. But the biggest moment came when Mohammed handed him a small wrapped gift. Inside was a custom-made football jersey with a simple message embroidered on the back: "Keep fighting." Tears filled Ahmed's eyes as he hugged him. And fight he did. Months turned into years. Treatment was tough, but Ahmed never gave up. He grew stronger, his spirit never wavering. Then, one day, the doctors delivered the news they had all been praying for. Ahmed was officially cancer-free. His family wept with joy. The young boy who had stood outside a football stadium selling cupcakes just to survive had beaten the odds. And he never forgot the kindness of the man who helped him when he needed it most. Years later, as a young man, Ahmed stood on stage at a fundraising gala for pediatric cancer. He had dedicated his life to helping other children, using his own story as inspiration. And when he spoke about his journey, he always ended with the same words: "One act of kindness can change a life." It changed mine. Sitting in the audience, smiling proudly, was Mohammed Salah, watching the young warrior he had once helped now helping others. As the applause echoed through the grand ballroom, Ahmed looked out at the crowd, his heart swelling with gratitude. The once young boy who had stood in front of a stadium with a box of cupcakes was now a powerful advocate, using his voice to bring hope to others. After the event, Mohammed approached him, his eyes filled with pride. Though the years had added a few more lines to his legendary face, his presence was just as strong as the day they first met. "You did it, kid," he said with a grin. Ahmed smiled, gripping the jersey he had been given all those years ago. "I couldn't have done it without you." Mohammed shook his head. "No, Ahmed, you did this. You fought. You won. And now you're giving back. That's what really matters." As they spoke, people lined up to meet Ahmed, to thank him for his courage, to tell him how much his story had meant to them. Parents of children still battling cancer hugged him, whispering that he was their inspiration. The event raised a record-breaking amount of money for pediatric cancer research. But more than that, it sparked something deeper, a movement of kindness, a reminder that no matter how dark life gets, there are always people willing to help. Before leaving, Mohammed turned to Ahmed one last time. "Keep fighting, kid. The world needs more people like you." Ahmed nodded, his eyes shining. "And the world needs more people like you too." With that, Mohammed Salah tipped his cap and walked away, disappearing in the night just as he had entered Ahmed's life, like a guardian angel in football boots. Ahmed watched him go, knowing that no matter where life took him, He would carry Muhammad's words, his kindness, and his belief in him forever. Because one act of generosity had changed everything. And now, it was his turn to do the same for others. This marks the end of Ahmed's story, where his impact would continue to grow in ways he never imagined. As the years passed, Ahmed became a well-known advocate for pediatric cancer awareness. He started a foundation called Cupcakes for a Cure, inspired by the little stand where it all began. The foundation helped families struggling with medical bills, funded cancer research, and supported children fighting the toughest battles of their lives. And every year, on the anniversary of the day he met Mohammed Salah, Ahmed would return to that same stadium. He'd set up a small table, just like before, and sell cupcakes. Not because he needed to, but because he wanted to remind the world that kindness still existed. People would line up, eager to meet him, to hear his story, and to give back. News stations covered it, celebrities donated, but no matter how big it got, Ahmed always kept things simple. A smile, a cupcake, and a message. Never stop fighting and never stop believing in the good in people. Point 1 year. On what would have been Muhammad Salah's 40th birthday, Ahmed organized the biggest charity event of his life, a gala dedicated to the power of small acts of kindness. As he stood on stage, looking out at a packed room, he knew he had come full circle. Years ago, I was just a scared little boy selling cupcakes, hoping for a miracle, he said. I got that miracle, not just in the form of money, but in kindness and belief. In someone taking a chance on me. That moment changed my life. And now I want to make sure other kids get that same chance. Tears filled the eyes of many in the audience. And as the event ended, Ahmed walked outside, looking up at the stars. Thank you, he whispered. Somewhere, somehow, he knew Mohammed Salah was smiling. And just like that, his story, once a tale of survival, had become a legacy of hope. Because kindness never dies. It only grows. Ahmed's foundation, Cupcakes for a Cure, grew into a national movement. Schools, businesses, and even football clubs joined in, hosting bake sales and fundraising events in honor of children battling cancer. The impact was undeniable. Lives were being changed, medical bills were being covered, and research was advancing faster than ever. But for Ahmed, the true reward was meeting the kids he was helping. He visited hospitals, sat with young fighters, and shared his story with them, hoping to give them the same hope Mohammed Salah had given him. Point 1 day. While visiting a children's hospital, a young girl no older than 7 reached out and grabbed his hand. Mr. Ahmed, she asked, her voice small but full of hope, do you think I can beat this? Ahmed knelt down, holding her tiny hand in his. I know you can, he said, because I did, and because you're even stronger than me. The girl smiled, gripping a small football plushie in her lap, one that looked suspiciously like a certain Liverpool legend. Years passed, and Ahmed's story became one of the most inspiring tales of perseverance and kindness in modern history. Documentaries were made about his journey. He even wrote a best-selling book titled One Cupcake at a Time, How Kindness Saved My Life. Then, on a quiet afternoon, as Ahmed sat in his office, sorting through letters from families his foundation had helped, his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. Hello? He answered, and a familiar, warm voice responded. Hey, kid, I heard you're still out there fighting the good fight. Ahmed froze, his heart skipping a beat. He hadn't heard that voice in years, but he could never forget it. Mr. Salah, he whispered out a chuckle. You can call me Muhammad. You've earned that much. Tears welled up in Ahmed's eyes as he smiled. Just wanted to check in, Muhammad continued. See how my little warrior is doing. Ahmed wiped away a tear. I'm doing great, and it's all because of you. Nah, Muhammad replied. It's because you never gave up. They talked for a while, catching up, reminiscing about that fateful day outside the stadium. Before they said goodbye, Mohammed left him with one final message. Keep going, Ahmed. The world still needs you. And with that, the call ended. Ahmed sat there, staring at his phone, feeling a warmth in his heart that no words could ever fully describe. He took a deep breath, stood up, and got back to work. Because he wasn't just a survivor. He was a warrior who would spend the rest of his life proving that kindness could change the world. That Ahmed's journey didn't stop there. His foundation, Cupcakes for a Cure, continued to grow, reaching far beyond the borders of Europe. It became a global movement, inspiring people from all walks of life to take action, no matter how small, to make a difference. Ahmed traveled the world, sharing his story at conferences, schools, and charity events. His message was simple yet powerful. Kindness is contagious, and one small act can create a ripple effect that changes lives. One day, while visiting a small village in Africa, Ahmed met a young boy named Kofi. Kofi had been diagnosed with a rare heart condition, and his family couldn't afford the surgery he desperately needed. Ahmed saw the same determination in Kofi's eyes that he once had as a child. Without hesitation, Ahmed's foundation stepped in to cover the cost of Kofi's surgery. The operation was a success, and Kofi's family wept with gratitude. Ahmed knew then that his work was far from over. Back in Europe, Ahmed's foundation partnered with football clubs, including Liverpool, to host annual charity matches. These events brought together some of the biggest names in football, all united for a common cause. Muhammed Salah, now retired but still a global icon, was a constant presence at these events. The two had formed an unbreakable bond over the years, and their friendship became a symbol of hope and resilience. One year, during a charity match at Anfield, Ahmed stood on the pitch, addressing the crowd. This stadium, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, is where my journey truly began. It's where I learned that even in the darkest moments, there is light. And that light comes from people who care, people who believe in you, people like Mohammed Salah. The crowd erupted in applause, and Mohammed, standing on the sidelines, gave Ahmed a thumbs up. After the match, the two sat together in the locker room, reminiscing about the day they first met. Do you remember that little stand outside the stadium? Ahmed asked, the smile tugging at his lips. Mohammed chuckled. How could I forget? You were this tiny kid with a big dream and an even bigger heart. I knew right then that you were special. Ahmed shook his head. I was just a kid trying to help my family. You're the one who showed me that dreams can come true. Mohammed placed a hand on Ahmed's shoulder. No, my friend. You showed me the power of courage and determination. You reminded me why we do what we do, not just on the pitch, but in life. As the years went by, Ahmed's foundation expanded its reach, funding research for rare diseases, building pediatric cancer wards in underserved areas, and providing scholarships for children who had overcome illness. Ahmed's story became a beacon of hope, not just for those battling illness, but for anyone facing adversity. One evening, as Ahmed sat in his office, he received a letter from a young girl in Brazil. She had been diagnosed with leukemia and had read Ahmed's book. In her letter, she wrote, "Your story gave me hope. I know I can fight this, just like you did." Ahmed's eyes filled with tears as he read her words. He realized that his journey had come full circle. The little boy who once stood outside a stadium, selling cupcakes to survive, was now inspiring others to keep fighting. On the 10th anniversary of Cupcakes for a Cure, Ahmed organized a global event, inviting people from every corner of the world to host their own bake sales and fundraisers. Social media was flooded with photos and stories of kindness. all tagged with hashtag one cupcake at a time. The event raised millions, but more importantly, it brought people together in a shared mission of hope and compassion. At the closing ceremony, Ahmed stood on stage, surrounded by children whose lives had been touched by his foundation. Among them was Kofi, now a healthy and energetic teenager, and the young girl from Brazil who had just completed her final round of chemotherapy. This, Ahmed said, his voice breaking with emotion, is what it's all about. It's not about the money or the fame. It's about the lives we touch, the hope we give, and the belief that no one has to fight alone. The crowd rose to their feet, their applause echoing through the venue. Muhammed Salah, now a proud father and philanthropist, joined Ahmed on stage. Together, they unveiled a new initiative, the Warrior Fund, a global effort to provide financial and emotional support to families battling childhood illnesses. As the event came to a close, Ahmed looked out at the sea of faces before him. He thought about the little boy he once was, standing outside a stadium with a box of cupcakes and a dream. He thought about Mohammed Salah, the man who had believed in him when he needed it most. And he thought about all the children around the world who were still fighting their own battles. This is just the beginning, Ahmed said, his voice steady and strong. Together, we can change the world, one cupcake, one act of kindness, one life at a time. And with that, the crowd erupted in cheers, their voices united in a chorus of hope and determination. Ahmed knew that his journey was far from over. There were still battles to fight, lives to touch, and dreams to fulfill. But he also knew that as long as there were people willing to help, no one would ever have to fight alone.